Marcus Thompson was not like the other kids in his new neighborhood. At 12 years old, he had already learned how to adapt to change, but this move felt different. His mother, Angela, had accepted a job in a small suburban town, far from the bustling city they were used to. It wasn't just the size of the town that made Marcus uneasy. It was the fact that he stood out. He was one of only a handful of black students at Springwood Middle School, and while he tried to keep his head down and focus on his studies, it didn't take long for him to realize that fitting in wouldn't be easy. On his first day at school, Marcus walked into the cafeteria with his lunchbox clutched tightly in his hands. He scanned the room looking for an empty seat. Most tables were full, occupied by groups of friends laughing and chatting loudly. Finally, he spotted a spot next to a boy named Jake, who seemed friendly enough. As Marcus sat down, Jake glanced up briefly before returning to his conversation with another student. "Hey," Marcus said softly, hoping to break the ice. Jake nodded but didn't say much. Instead, he turned back to his friend and continued talking about their favorite video games. Feeling awkward, Marcus opened his lunchbox and began eating quietly. The noise around him faded into the background as he focused on finishing his meal. But then out of nowhere, Jake turned to him and asked, "So what's your deal? You don't talk much?" Caught off guard, Marcus hesitated. He wasn't sure how to respond. Telling the truth, that he was nervous and unsure of himself, felt too vulnerable. So instead, he decided to share something that might make him seem cool, or at least interesting. "Well," Marcus started, trying to sound casual. "You know Vin Diesel, the actor? He's actually my uncle." The table went silent. For a moment, no one said anything. Then slowly, Jake's face broke into a grin. "No way," he said, leaning forward. "Seriously?" Marcus nodded, feeling a mix of pride and relief. Sure, it wasn't true. Vin Diesel wasn't really his uncle, but Marcus figured it was harmless fun. Plus, it worked. Suddenly, everyone at the table wanted to hear more. They peppered him with questions. What's he like in real life? Does he let you ride in his fancy cars? Have you been on set with him? At first, Marcus enjoyed the attention. He found himself spinning elaborate stories about family barbecues where Vin would grill burgers and tell funny jokes. He described weekends spent watching movies together and even claimed that Vin once taught him how to do push-ups. The more he talked, the more animated he became, and soon the entire table was hanging on to his every word. But as the days passed, Marcus began to notice a shift. What started as curiosity quickly turned into skepticism. Some kids whispered behind his back, rolling their eyes whenever he mentioned Vin Diesel. Others laughed openly, calling him names like liar or fake. Marcus tried to brush it off, telling himself it didn't matter what they thought. But deep down, it hurt. Every snicker and sarcastic comment chipped away at his confidence, leaving him feeling smaller and smaller. Things got worse when the story spread beyond the cafeteria. By the end of the week, nearly everyone in the school knew about Marcus's claim. Even teachers overheard the rumors during class discussions. One afternoon, Mrs. Peterson, Marcus's English teacher, pulled him aside after class. "Marcus," she said gently, "is there something you'd like to talk about? I've heard some things." Marcus shook his head, avoiding her gaze. "It's nothing, ma'am," he mumbled. "Just kids being kids." Mrs. Peterson frowned but didn't press further. She gave him a reassuring smile and sent him on his way. Still, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched or judged by everyone around him. That evening, as he walked home from school, Marcus replayed the day's events in his mind. He wondered if he should come clean and admit the truth. But admitting the truth meant facing the ridicule head-on, and Marcus wasn't sure he was ready for that. Instead, he decided to double down on his story, hoping that somehow it would all blow over. Little did Marcus know, his lie was about to take a turn he could never have imagined. Back at home, his mother, Angela, noticed the change in him almost immediately. Gone was the cheerful boy who used to chat excitedly about his day. In his place was a quiet, withdrawn child who barely spoke unless spoken to. Concerned, Angela resolved to find out what was going on, and her discovery would set off a chain of events that would change Marcus's life forever. The bullying began subtly at first, almost like a ripple in an otherwise calm pond. At first it was just whispers, quiet murmurs that Marcus could barely hear, but felt like thunder in his ears. As he walked through the crowded hallways of Springwood Middle School, he would catch snippets of conversations. Did you hear what Marcus said? Or Vin Diesel? Really? The words stung, but Marcus tried to ignore them. He told himself it wasn't worth getting upset over. After all, kids teased each other all the time, right? It was just part of being in middle school. But the teasing didn't stop there. By the second week, the whispers turned into outright mockery. During gym class, when the coach divided the students into teams for basketball, Marcus found himself picked last. Not because he was bad at sports, but because no one wanted him on their team. Hey, maybe Vin Diesel can teach you how to shoot. Hoops, one boy sneered as the others laughed. Marcus forced a smile, pretending it didn't bother him, but inside he felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment. Things escalated quickly after that. In art class, someone drew a crude picture of Vin Diesel with exaggerated features and wrote, Marcus's uncle, underneath it. The drawing made its way around the classroom until it landed on Marcus's desk. When he saw it, he crumpled it, up and threw it in the trash, trying to act like it didn't affect him. But the damage was already done. The laughter echoed in his ears long after the bell rang, following him like a shadow wherever he went. Even lunchtime, which used to be a brief escape from the chaos of school, became unbearable. Marcus started eating alone, sitting at the farthest corner of the cafeteria where no one could see him. He avoided making eye contact with anyone, hoping that if he stayed invisible, the bullies would leave him alone. But they didn't. One day, as he opened his lunchbox, a group of boys approached him. Their leader, a tall kid named Ryan, who always seemed to have a smirk plastered across his face, leaned down and said, So Marcus, when's your famous uncle coming to visit? We want to meet him. Marcus froze, his sandwich halfway to his mouth. He didn't know what to say. If he admitted the truth, that Vin Diesel wasn't really his uncle, it would only make things worse. So instead, he shrugged and muttered, He's busy, saving the world and stuff. Ryan burst out laughing, and the rest of the group joined in. Saving the world? Yeah, okay, Ryan said, rolling his eyes. Maybe he can save you from being such a loser. With that, they walked away, leaving Marcus feeling smaller than ever. As the days turned into weeks, the bullying grew more relentless. Marcus became the punchline of every joke, the target of every insult. Kids would mimic Vin Diesel's deep voice in exaggerated tones, saying things like, I'm Marcus's cool uncle. Bow down to me. Others made fun of his race, using his claim about Vin Diesel as an excuse to hurl racial slurs. You think you're special because you're related to some Hollywood star? You're not fooling anyone, one girl sneered. During science class, Marcus clenched his fists under the table, biting his lip to keep from crying. He hated feeling powerless, but what could he do? Fighting back would only make things worse. Teachers noticed the tension, of course. Mrs. Peterson, Marcus's English teacher, often glanced at him during lessons, her brow furrowed with concern. Once, during a group activity, she paired Marcus with Jake, the same boy who had initially been intrigued by his story, and whispered, Be kind to him, okay? Jake nodded, but Marcus could tell he didn't mean it. When they worked together, Jake barely spoke, and when he did, it was to make snide remarks about Marcus's movie star family. Despite the growing hostility, Marcus refused to tell anyone what was happening. He didn't want to burden his mom, Angela, who worked long hours to provide for them. She had enough on her plate without worrying about her son's problems at school. Besides, Marcus reasoned, telling her wouldn't solve anything. She couldn't fight his battles for him, and so he kept quiet, retreating further into himself with each passing day. At home, Marcus spent most of his time in his room, either reading comic books or watching action movies. He loved the escapism they offered, the chance to step into a world where heroes always won and villains got what they deserved. Sometimes he imagined himself as one of those heroes, standing up to bullies and earning the respect of everyone around him. But in reality, he felt anything but heroic. He felt weak, defeated, and utterly alone. One evening, as Marcus lay on his bed staring at the ceiling, he heard a knock on his door. It was Angela, holding a tray with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "Mind if I join you?" she asked softly. Marcus hesitated before nodding. Angela sat down beside him and handed him a mug. For a while, neither of them spoke. They simply sipped their drinks in silence, the warmth of the chocolate doing little to ease the chill in Marcus's heart. Finally, Angela broke the silence. "You've seemed different lately," she said, choosing her words carefully. "Is everything okay at school?" Marcus shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "It's fine," he lied. "Just adjusting, you know." Angela studied him for a moment, her expression softening. "You know you can talk to me, right, about anything?" Marcus nodded, but he still couldn't bring himself to open up. Instead, he changed the subject, asking about her day at work. Angela let him steer the conversation, sensing that he wasn't ready to share yet. But as she left his room later that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. Her instincts told her that Marcus was carrying a heavy burden, one he shouldn't have to bear alone. Unbeknownst to Marcus, Angela resolved to find out the truth. She knew her son well enough to recognize when something was troubling him, and this time she wasn't going to let it slide. Over the next few days, she paid closer attention to his behavior, noticing the way he flinched whenever the phone rang, or how he avoided looking her in the eye during dinner. Something or someone was hurting her boy, and Angela was determined to put a stop to it. Meanwhile, Marcus continued to endure the torment, clinging to the hope that it would eventually fade. But deep down, he knew better. The bullying had become a part of his daily life, woven into the fabric of his existence like a dark thread he couldn't unravel. And though he tried to convince himself that it didn't matter what others thought, the constant ridicule wore him down bit by bit, chipping away at his confidence and leaving behind a hollow shell of the boy he once was. Angela Thompson was no stranger to challenges. As a single mother raising Marcus on her own, she had faced countless obstacles over the years: long work hours, tight budgets, and the constant balancing act of being both a parent and a provider. But nothing prepared her for the sinking feeling in her chest when she realized her son was struggling in ways she couldn't immediately fix. It started with small signs: Marcus's reluctance to talk about school, his habit of retreating to his room as soon as he got home, and the way he seemed to shrink into himself whenever she asked how his day went. At first, Angela chalked it up to the usual adjustment period that came with moving to a new town. Change wasn't easy, especially for kids, and Marcus had always been a quiet boy who needed time to warm up to new environments. But as days turned into weeks, her concern grew. Something was wrong. She could feel it. One evening, after noticing Marcus staring blankly at his untouched dinner plate, Angela decided enough was enough. She cleared away the dishes and sat down across from him at the kitchen table. "Marcus," she began gently, "I need you to tell me what's going on. You're not yourself lately, and it's worrying me." Marcus hesitated, fidgeting with the edge of his napkin. He wanted to tell her, to unburden himself of the weight pressing down on his chest every day. But where would he even begin? How could he explain the teasing, the laughter, the cruel jokes, all because of something he'd said in a moment of desperation? What if she thought he was foolish or immature for lying in the first place? "I'm fine, Mom," Marcus finally muttered, avoiding her gaze. "Just tired, I guess." Angela sighed, leaning forward to rest her elbows on the table. "Don't shut me out, sweetheart. Whatever it is, we can figure it out together. You know that, right?" Her words tugged at Marcus's heart. Angela had always been his rock, the person who made everything better no matter how tough things got. But this felt different. This wasn't a scraped knee or a bad grade. This was humiliation, shame, and loneliness all rolled into one. And yet, looking at her now, her eyes filled with love and determination, Marcus felt his resolve weakening. After a long pause, he took a deep breath and blurted out, "Some kids at school don't like me." The confession hung in the air between them. Angela nodded slowly, encouraging him to continue. "Why don't they like you?" she asked, keeping her tone calm and non-judgmental. Marcus swallowed hard, his voice trembling as he spoke. "They think I'm weird because I told them Vin Diesel is my uncle." For a moment, Angela didn't say anything. She simply looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then, to Marcus's surprise, she smiled, a soft, understanding smile that somehow managed to ease some of the tension in the room. "Okay," she said simply. "And why did you tell them that?" Marcus shrugged, tears welling up in his eyes. "I don't know. I just wanted them to like me, I guess. Everyone talks about their cool families or awesome vacations, and I didn't have anything like that to share. So I said Vin Diesel was my uncle, and at first, they thought it was funny. But then they started making fun of me. They call me names and laugh at me all the time, and sometimes they say mean stuff about my skin color too." By the time he finished speaking, Marcus was crying openly, his shoulders shaking as he tried to hold back sobs. Angela moved quickly to his side, pulling him into a tight embrace. "Oh, baby," she whispered, stroking his hair. "I'm so sorry you've been carrying this by yourself. You don't deserve to be treated that way, not by anyone." As Marcus cried, Angela held him close, letting him release all the pain and frustration he'd been bottling up for weeks. When he finally calmed down, she wiped away his tears and looked him in the eye. "Listen to me," she said firmly, but kindly. "You are amazing just the way you are. Your worth doesn't depend on what other people think of you, okay? Those kids don't know how lucky they are to have someone like you in their lives." Marcus sniffled, nodding slightly. Her words brought him comfort, but he still couldn't shake the fear that the bullying wouldn't stop. "What if they keep doing it, Mom?" he asked quietly. "What if it never gets better?" Angela sighed, her mind racing as she considered the best course of action. Reporting the bullying to the school was an option, but she knew that might only make things worse for Marcus in the short term. No, she needed to do something bigger, something that would show her son he wasn't alone and that there were people in the world who believed in him. That night, after Marcus had gone to bed, Angela sat at the kitchen table with a pen and paper. She stared at the blank page for a while, thinking carefully about what she wanted to say. Finally, she began writing. "Dear Mr. Diesel, I hope this letter finds her safe and well. My name is Angela Thompson, and I am reaching out to you on behalf of my son Marcus. Marcus is 12 years old, and recently he found himself in a difficult situation at school. In an effort to connect with his classmates, he jokingly claimed that you were his uncle. Unfortunately, this led to him being bullied relentlessly by other students. While Marcus understands that this claim isn't true, the impact of the bullying has taken a toll on him emotionally. He admires you greatly and looks up to you as a role model, which is why I believe hearing from you, even just a few kind words, would mean the world to him. If there's any way you could send him a note or perhaps a signed photo, it would lift his spirits more than you can imagine. Thank you for taking the time to read this, and thank you for being such a positive influence in the lives of young people everywhere. Sincerely, Angela Thompson." When she finished writing, Angela folded the letter neatly and placed it in an envelope. She hesitated for a moment, wondering if sending it was a long shot. After all, celebrities like Vin Diesel received countless letters every day. What were the chances he would actually respond? Still, she couldn't let doubt stop her. This was for Marcus, for his happiness, his confidence, and his future. The next morning, Angela mailed the letter, crossing her fingers and hoping for the best. Over the following days, she kept herself busy, focusing on work and household chores to distract from the uncertainty of whether they'd hear back. Meanwhile, Marcus remained unaware of his mother's efforts, continuing to endure the daily torment at school. But Angela refused to give up hope. Deep down, she believed in the power of kindness, and in the possibility that someone as influential as Vin Diesel might take a moment to make a difference in her son's life. Little did She knew her simple act of reaching out would set off a chain reaction that would change everything, not just for Marcus, but for the entire community. Weeks passed, and life at Springwood Middle School continued its usual rhythm, or at least it seemed that way on the surface. For Marcus, each day was a blur of monotony and dread. He woke up with a knot in his stomach, dreading the bus ride, to school where whispers followed him like shadows. The hallways were no better. They felt like a maze he had to navigate while avoiding the sneers and snickers of classmates who still couldn't let go of the Vin Diesel joke. Even teachers, though kind enough, seemed powerless to stop the relentless teasing. At home, Angela watched her son closely. She saw how quiet he'd become, how his once bright eyes now carried a weight far too heavy for a 12-year-old. Every evening, she tried to engage him in conversation, asking about his day, or sharing stories from her own childhood. But Marcus's responses were short and vague, often ending with a shrug or a mumbled, "It's fine." Angela knew it wasn't fine, but she also understood that healing wouldn't happen overnight. Still, she clung to hope that her letter to Vin Diesel might bring some light into Marcus's dark days. One afternoon, as Angela returned from running errands, she noticed a small package sitting on the porch. It was wrapped neatly in brown paper with a return address label that made her heart skip a beat. Universal Studios. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked it up and brought it inside. Could this really be what she thought it was? Or was it just another promotional item sent by mistake? She set the package on the kitchen counter and called out to Marcus, who was upstairs in his room. "Marcus, come down here," she said, trying to sound casual despite the excitement bubbling inside her. "What is it?" Marcus asked, appearing at the top of the stairs. His tone was indifferent, as if he expected nothing more than a mundane request to help with dinner or clean his room. "There's something for you," Angela replied, gesturing toward the package. "Come see." Curiosity piqued, Marcus descended the stairs slowly, his brow furrowing as he approached the counter. "For me?" he asked skeptically. "Who's it from?" "Open it and find out," Angela encouraged, stepping back to give him space. With hesitant fingers, Marcus tore open the wrapping. Inside was a large manila envelope bearing the Universal Studios logo. He opened it carefully, revealing a glossy photograph of Vin Diesel standing confidently against a backdrop of action-packed movie posters. Beneath the photo was a handwritten note written in bold, blocky letters, a signature style Marcus recognized instantly from interviews and magazine covers. The note read, "Dear Marcus, I heard about your story, and I wanted to take a moment to say this. You are stronger than you know. Life throws challenges our way all the time, but it's how we face them that defines us. Keep believing in yourself, because you have greatness within you. Never forget that. Your friend, Vin Diesel." Marcus stared at the note, his mouth agape. For several seconds he didn't move or speak, as if afraid the moment might shatter if he did. Finally, he looked up at Angela, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is this real?" Angela smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart, it's real. He wrote this for you." A wave of emotions washed over Marcus, surprise, disbelief, and finally gratitude. For the first time in weeks, maybe even months, he felt seen, not as the target of ridicule, but as someone worthy of attention and care. Clutching the photo tightly, he whispered, "I can't believe he actually wrote back." "He did," Angela said, her voice warm and steady. "And do you know why? Because people like Vin Diesel understand how important it is to lift others up. They use their platform to make a difference, and today, he chose to make a difference for you." Marcus nodded, tracing the edges of the photograph with his fingertips. He couldn't stop looking at the note, reading and rereading the words, until they were etched into his memory. "You are stronger than you know." Those simple yet powerful words resonated deeply within him, planting a seed of confidence he hadn't felt in a long time. Over the next few days, Marcus kept the photo, tucked safely in his backpack, pulling it out whenever he needed a reminder of Vin Diesel's message. At school, the bullying hadn't stopped completely. The same kids still teased him and the same cruel jokes echoed through the halls. But somehow, Marcus found it easier to ignore them. Knowing that someone as accomplished and admired as Vin Diesel believed in him gave him a newfound sense of resilience. Word of the signed photo spread quickly among Marcus's classmates. Jake, the boy who had initially been intrigued by Marcus's claim, approached him during lunch one day. "Hey, I heard Vin Diesel sent you something," he said, his tone uncharacteristically soft. "That's pretty cool." Marcus hesitated before nodding. "Yes, it is," he admitted, surprised by Jake's change in demeanor. Jake glanced around nervously before lowering his voice. "Look, I'm sorry about, everything. I shouldn't have laughed when those guys started picking on you. It wasn't fair." For a moment, Marcus didn't know what to say. He'd spent so much time bracing himself for insults that an apology caught him off guard. "Thanks," he said, finally offering a small smile. "I appreciate that." As word of the apology spread, other students began to rethink their behavior. Some approached Marcus to express regret for joining in on the teasing, while others simply stopped laughing altogether. Though the transformation wasn't immediate or universal, it marked the beginning of a shift, a slow but steady thaw in the icy atmosphere that had surrounded Marcus for so long. Meanwhile, Angela couldn't contain her joy at seeing her son's spirits lift. One evening, as they sat together at the kitchen table, she asked, "How are you feeling these days, Marcus? Better?" Marcus thought for a moment before answering. "Yeah, Mom. Things aren't perfect, but I feel like I can handle it now. Like I don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore." Angela reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "That's all I ever wanted for you. To see that your worth doesn't depend on what other people think. You're amazing just the way you are." Little did either of them know, however, that Vin Diesel's gesture was only the beginning. Unbeknownst to Angela, her original letter had sparked not just a personal response, but an idea. One that would lead to an unforgettable visit and a ripple effect that would touch the entire school community. For now, though, Marcus held onto the photo and the note, cherishing them as symbols of hope and proof that sometimes heroes really do answer when you call. The weeks following Vin Diesel's heartfelt note brought a subtle but noticeable change in Marcus. The photo and the message became his anchor, a reminder that he was stronger than the bullies made him feel. He began carrying himself differently, walking through the halls of Springwood Middle School with his head held a little higher. The cruel jokes still lingered, but they didn't cut as deeply anymore. Marcus had found something to hold on to, and it was enough to keep him going. What Marcus didn't know, however, was that Vin Diesel wasn't done yet. After reading Angela's letter and sending the signed photo, Vin couldn't shake the story from his mind. It wasn't just about Marcus. It was about every kid who felt alone, misunderstood, or bullied for being different. As someone who had faced challenges growing up, Vin knew firsthand how isolating those experiences could be. He wanted to do more than send words of encouragement. He wanted to show Marcus, and others like him, that they mattered. So, Vin reached out to Angela directly. Through his management team, he arranged a secret meeting with her to discuss an idea. A surprise visit to Springwood Middle School, under the guise of promoting anti-bullying initiatives. Angela was overwhelmed when she received the call. At first, she thought it was too good to be true. Vin Diesel coming to their small town, to their tiny school. But as the details unfolded, she realized this was real. And not only was it happening, but Vin insisted on keeping it a complete surprise for Marcus. On the day of the visit, the entire school buzzed with excitement. Students filed into the auditorium, chatting animatedly about what the assembly might entail. Rumors spread like wildfire. Is it a famous athlete? Maybe it's a singer. No one suspected Vin Diesel, not even Marcus, who assumed it was just another boring motivational speaker sent by the district. When the principal took the stage to introduce the guest speaker, the room fell silent. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice echoing through the auditorium. "Today we have a very special visitor joining us to talk about resilience, kindness, and standing up against bullying. Please welcome Vin Diesel." For a split second, there was stunned silence. Then, gasps erupted throughout the auditorium as the doors swung open and Vin Diesel strode in, dressed in his signature leather jacket and sunglasses. The students erupted into cheers, jumping to their feet and clapping wildly. Marcus sat frozen, in his seat, his jaw dropping as he stared at the man who had become his unlikely hero. Vin walked confidently to the center of the stage, removing his sunglasses to reveal a warm smile. Thank you, he said, raising his hands to quiet the crowd. I'm so happy to be here today. As the noise settled, Vin began speaking. His deep, commanding voice filled the auditorium as he shared stories from his own life, how he overcame obstacles, dealt with self-doubt, and learned to stand tall in the face of adversity. He spoke passionately about the importance of treating others with respect and kindness, emphasizing that everyone has value, regardless of their background or circumstances. You may think I'm just some guy from the movies, Vin said, pausing to let his words sink in. But trust me, I've been where many of you are now. I felt like I didn't belong, like people were judging me before getting to know me. And let me tell you, it's tough. But here's the thing. You don't have to let other people define you. Only you get to decide who you are and what you're capable of. The students listened intently, hanging on every word. For many of them, this was more than just a celebrity appearance. It was a lesson they desperately needed to hear. But Vin wasn't finished yet. Midway through his speech, he paused and looked out into the audience. There's someone here today who inspired me to come, he said, his gaze scanning the sea of faces until it landed on Marcus. Marcus Thompson, can you join me on stage? The room went dead silent. All eyes turned to Marcus, who sat frozen in disbelief. Was this really happening? Slowly, he stood up, his legs trembling as he made his way to the front of the auditorium. Whispers rippled through the crowd. That's Marcus? Wait, he's the reason Vin Diesel is here? But Marcus barely heard them. His focus was solely on the figure waiting for him at the edge of the stage. Vin extended a hand to help Marcus climb the steps, then knelt down to meet him eye to eye. For a moment, the two simply looked at each other, the noise of the auditorium fading into the background. Finally, Vin broke the silence. Turning to face the audience, he announced loudly, "This is my nephew, Marcus, and anyone who messes with him has to answer to me." The room exploded into thunderous applause. Cheers and whistles filled the air as students rose to their feet once again. Marcus stood there, overwhelmed by emotion, as tears streamed down his cheeks. For the first time in months, he didn't feel invisible. He felt powerful, like a true hero stepping into the spotlight. Vin stayed on stage for a few more minutes, encouraging the students to treat each other with compassion and reminding them that they all had the potential to make a difference. When the assembly ended, the energy in the school was electric. Students lined up to shake Vin's hand, take selfies, and express their gratitude. But Vin saved his final moments for Marcus. As the crowd dispersed, Vin pulled Marcus aside for a private conversation. "Hey, buddy," he said, placing a reassuring hand on Marcus's shoulder. "How are you holding up?" Marcus wiped his eyes, still trying to process everything that had just happened. I don't even know what to say," he admitted. "Thank you doesn't feel like enough." Vin chuckled softly. "You don't have to thank me, Marcus. You're the one who inspired me to come here today. Your story reminded me why it's so important to stand up for ourselves and for each other. Never forget that." They talked for a while longer, sharing laughs and exchanging stories. By the time Vin left, Marcus felt like a completely different person. The weight that had been crushing him for months was gone, replaced by a sense of pride and purpose. And though Vin's visit was brief, its impact would last a lifetime, not just for Marcus, but for everyone who witnessed it. As the day came to a close, Angela arrived at the school to pick Marcus up. She could see the change in him immediately, the sparkle in his eyes, the bounce in his step. "So," she said with a knowing smile, "what did you think of your uncle?" Marcus grinned, shaking his head in amazement. "Mom, he's not just my uncle, he's a superhero." And for the first time in a long time, Marcus truly believed it.